Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into something pretty out there, an alternative history of evolution that seriously challenges, well, almost everything we think we know.
Yeah, it's quite a trick.
We're looking at H.P. Blavatsky's huge work, The Secret Doctrine, and specifically her ideas about how life, especially human life, evolved.
Right.
Our mission today, if you will, is to explore this ancient esoteric framework. It's radically different from Darwin, particularly about where mammals came from and humanity's earliest forms. Get ready, because it gets weird.
It definitely does. And our main source is Volume 2 of The Secret Doctrine, called Anthropogenesis.
Yeah.
And look, this isn't modern biology. It's esoteric history, spiritual evolution, talks about ancient human, let's say, missteps.
Transgressions, yeah.
It's totally outside mainstream science, but as we'll see, it touches on some surprisingly resonant ideas. It makes you think.
Okay, let's jump right into the deep end. The biggest shocker, maybe. Blavatsky claims that in our current evolutionary cycle, the fourth round, she calls it humans actually showed up before physical mammals. I mean, how does that even work? That flips everything upside down, right?
It absolutely does. You first have to grasp the occult idea of rounds. Think of evolution not as one long, straight path, but these huge, vast cycles, manvanteric periods.
Okay.
Each big cycle has 7 rounds. And in each round, this spiritual spark, the monad, journeys through different planets, different kingdoms, mineral, plant, animal. It's like a whole cosmic curriculum.
A cosmic school system. I like that.
Yeah, kind of. So the reason man comes before mammals in this specific fourth round is because the monad, that spiritual core, has already done the groundwork. You know, it's been through mineral, vegetable, proto-animal stages in previous rounds.
Ah, okay. So it's already got the prerequisites done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by the time we get to this fourth round, the monads destined for humanity are the most evolved ones present. Man, therefore, the human form, is the first to properly manifest here. It's the prototype, the model for what comes next physically.
And this is where it gets really wild. This first human form wasn't like us. It was, what, ethereal, made of really subtle matter.
That's the idea, a shadowy plastic body. Not dense, not locked into our physical laws yet. And here's the kicker you mentioned. This early ethereal human form actually provided the astral blueprint.
The template.
Yeah, the template. And also the cast-off substance, the leftover ethereal matter from which the physical bodies of later mammals were actually constructed.
So, hang on. It's like we shed the stuff that they were built from, not the other way around.
In a very real, esoteric sense, yes. That's the claim. It fits into this larger picture of a descending arc of evolution. Spirit gradually gets deeper and deeper into matter.
Right, becoming more dense.
Exactly. It hits peak density, the lowest point, around the middle of the fourth race in our current fourth round, right here on Earth. Humanity, right now, or around then, represents that turning point, that balance between spirit and matter.
And then it starts ascending again.
Then begins the ascending arc, where spirit starts to climb back out, reasserting itself over dense physical form.
Okay, but if early humans were ethereal and mammals weren't really around yet in their solid forms, how did the first animals of this round get going? How did they reproduce?
Right, good question. The methods described are unconventional, to say the least. One of the stanzas, the shlokas, puts it like this. The first animals came from drops of sweat.
Sweat? Seriously?
Yep, drops of sweat from the residue of the substance, matter from dead bodies and animals of the wheel before, meaning the previous third round, and from cast-off dust.
Wow. So not biology as we know it, more like life emerging from leftover vital energy.
Precisely. Vital essences, ethereal residues from past cycles, past life forms, including, importantly, the cast-off astral substance of man himself. It's spontaneous generation, but on an ethereal level.
And you mentioned this connects to old myths and traditions, even Genesis.
It does, if you read them through an esoteric lens. Genesis chapter 1, for example, can be seen as describing creation on higher spiritual planes, archetypes. So you get animals like whales and birds created before this kind of androgyne archetypal atom. They're spiritual prototypes, not physical things.
Right.
Then Genesis chapter 2 shifts. It describes a sequence on the physical plane in this fourth round. Here, Adam, representing early, sexless, ethereal humanity, is created first.
Before the animals this time.
Right, and the physical animals only appear after him, formed from the residue he casts off, essentially. And that deep sleep of Adam.
Yeah.
Esoterically, that's not about making Eve. It symbolizes the sort of mental fog, the unconscious state of the very first human races, before the mind, the intellect, fully spark within the physical form.
Fascinating. So it's a different reading entirely.
Completely. And you find similar echoes in the Hindu Puranas, Chaldean texts, the Egyptian myths, Chinese traditions, once you unlock the allegories.
Like what?
Well, they support ideas like the third race being oviparous egg-laying.
Yeah.
And they hint at how the first mammals appeared when whence. Commentary describes them as gigantic, transparent, dumb, and monstrous, evolving from man's ethereal waste.
Okay. Gigantic, transparent, dumb, and monstrous definitely paints a picture. And this connects to figures like Pulastya, father of serpents, or Kasyapa, father of birds and cows. Those are allegories.
Exactly. They represent these different streams of life, different modes of generation. The first Nagas, or serpents in the Secret Doctrine, aren't just snakes. They're called sons of will and yoga.
Sons of will and yoga.
Yeah. Highly evolved beings born before sex is fully separated. They matured in special man-bearing eggs. These weren't laid biologically. They were created by the conscious mental power, Kriya Sakti, of great sages from the early third race.
So mind power creating life.
Essentially, yes. Projecting their ethereal doubles to generate offspring. These beings became the chosen bodies for various high spiritual entities to incarnate into.
Okay, that's a lot to take in.
And there's even a fascinating tradition connecting descendants of these Nagas, these serpents of wisdom, to the Americas. It suggests they came during the Atlantean era, bringing sacred knowledge, which might explain all those serpent god legends in ancient Mexico and elsewhere, the Nagals.
Wow. Okay, so layers upon layers. You mentioned another story, the sacrifice of Daksha, as an allegory for how procreation changed.
Yes, the Daksha story from the Puranas is key.
Yeah.
Daksha represents that early third race, pure but mindless, not self-aware yet. He's seen as the creator of physical man through non-sexual means.
Okay.
In the story, he loses his head, and it gets replaced with a ram's head. The ram that's a symbol of, well, animal generation, sexual force.
Ah, so the shift from ethereal creation to physical sex.
Exactly. It marks that transition.
Right.
And the god Siva, representing destruction and regeneration, interrupts Daksha's sort of mindless ritual. Siva creates this being, Virabhadra,
Right.
who then creates other beings, the Ramas, from the pores of his own skin, which loops right back to that sweatborn idea we talked about.
A direct reference.
Amazing. And one text, the Vayu Purana, actually lists the types of birth present at Daksha's sacrifice. Egg-born, vapor-born, vegetation-born, pore-born, and birth from the womb comes last.
So it explicitly shows a sequence.
It explicitly shows a sequence moving away from psychic and spiritual generation, willpower, sight, touch, yoga power, towards the physical methods we know now.
Okay, so we have ethereal forms, psychic procreation, sweat-born, egg-born. How did things get, well, solid? How did we get bones and separate sexes in this esoteric view? Does any of this connect back even loosely to modern science?
Well, the texts describe this gradual solidification. Shloka 29 talks about vertebrates and birds appearing, animals with bones, dragons of the deep, and flying sarpas.
Which they interpret as like Mesozoic reptiles.
Yeah, large amphibious and flying reptiles.
Yeah.
They were added to the creeping things, providing a denser physical framework. And it even says, they that creep on the ground got wings. They of the long necks in the water became the progenitors of the fowls of the air.
That sounds surprisingly familiar, like the reptile to bird link.
It does, doesn't it? It echoes things like Archaeopteryx. Modern paleontology sees that transition in fossils. The esoteric view agrees on the link, but says it's way more complex, involving those astral prototypes guiding the physical changes.
Okay. And the actual hardening, the bones.
That's Shloka 30. During the third race, the previously boneless animals started developing bones. Their chayas, their ethereal shadows or bodies, became solid.
So a shift from astral to physical structure.
Right, from proto-organisms to dense vertebrates. And crucially, this happened alongside the human form also solidifying. It was a parallel process.
And then the separation of sexes?
That's Shloka 31. It states very clearly, the animals separated the first into male and female. They, the animals, began to breed. Then it says the twofold man then separated also.
So animals first, then humans.
Yes. And early humans, seeing this new way of making creatures, essentially said, let us do as they do. Let us unite and make creatures. And they did. They copied the animals, according to this text.
Copy the animals. Wow. And does biology have anything to say about sexes separating after an earlier stage?
Actually, yes. Modern biology finds the idea of formerly hermaphroditic mammals plausible. Think about the embryo. It has a fundamentally androgen nature early on. And all vertebrates retain rudimentary organs of the opposite sex. Science calls them inherited rudiments from an unknown ancestry. Occultism says that unknown ancestry, It's those primeval astral prototypes we've been talking about.
The ethereal blueprints again. Okay. Now this leads us to maybe the most challenging part. The first great sin. What happened with these mindless races?
Right, this is a huge point in the esoteric narrative, covered in Shloka 32. It's about the first real fall into dense matter and a major transgression, these mindless races.
The early third race, humans without full intellect.
Exactly. Before the sons of wisdom fully incarnated and sparked their minds, these early humans, still semi-ethereal but becoming physical, started breeding with certain female animals of that period.
Breeding with animals?
Yes. But we have to stress both the men and the animals back then were physiologically very different from anything alive today. Forms were much more plastic, less fixed.
Okay, and the result of these unions?
The progenies were described as monstrous, dumb beings, a horrifying mix of human and animal, a race of crooked, red-hair-covered monsters going on all fours.
Oh, good grief.
This, Blavatsky says, is the real missing link science is looking for. Not an ape ancestor to man, but this degraded, soulless offshoot from early man, an evolutionary dead end.
So the shame mentioned in the text refers to this monstrous creation.
It refers to this grotesque act, yes, this animalistic misuse of the creative power, the desecration of the human form and potential. But the karmic fallout wasn't just on the mindless ones who did it.
Oh, who else?
It also fell on the higher spiritual beings, the sons of flame. Their duty was to incarnate and enlighten those early humans sooner. By delaying, they left those races vulnerable, spiritually unprotected, allowing this transgression to happen. So they share the karmic responsibility.
Wow, that adds another layer of complexity. Okay, this really crystallizes the clash with Darwin, doesn't it? This top-down versus bottom-up evolution.
Absolutely. Occultism flatly rejects the idea that man evolved from an ape or even a shared ape-man ancestor in this current fourth round on Earth.
It says the opposite, basically.
It says the opposite for some apes. That some anthropoid species are the direct, albeit monstrous and degraded descendants of that third race man who committed that sin back in the early Atlantean times.
So the apes came from us in a distorted way, not the other way around.
That's the assertion for certain species. Now, occultism does say that nature built an ape-like form around the human astral blueprint at one stage. But that was way back in the first, second, and third rounds. Different planets, different cycles, immense time periods ago.
Ah, so the similarity we see now isn't about direct physical ancestry in this round, but a shared pattern from way back.
Exactly. A shared astral pattern from previous evolutionary ages. The fundamental difference, the real chasm between the two systems, is the monad, the jiva.
Explain that again.
In occultism, the monad is always divine, always potentially human, even when it's cycling through a rock or a plant or an animal. That's just its temporary vehicle for gathering experience.
So calling it a mineral monad or animal monad is just shorthand for its current classroom.
Precisely. It describes the temporary form, not the eternal essence. The monad's goal is to become fully self-conscious, divine, at the end of the whole cosmic journey.
Okay, so back to the apes. The source claims that this horrific act of primeval man breeding with an animal actually created the ape lineage we know, fixing that form in nature.
That's the implication for the anthropoids, yes. That this transgression filled that gap, that great chasm we perceive between human consciousness and animal instinct. A gap materialism struggles to explain.
And this esoteric view has a completely different take on embryology too, right? That ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny idea.
Right. Modern science looks at the human embryo, sees the tadpole stage, the gill slits the tail, and says, see, proof of our fishy, reptilian, mammalian past.
Which makes intuitive sense from that perspective.
It does. But the occultists apparently knew about this for ages and said, yes, we see that too, but you're only looking at one chapter of the book.
What do they mean?
They talk that the embryo's development isn't just repeating physical evolution on Earth. It's a tiny mirror reflecting the monad's entire journey through all the kingdoms of nature across all the previous rounds.
Whoa. So it's recapitulating a cosmic history, not just a planetary one.
That's the idea. Kabbalists and others broke it down. First, the initial germ cell. It's made of the same basic minerals as a stone, as the Earth. That reflects the monad's time in the mineral kingdom.
Okay, mineral first.
Then, after a few weeks, the ovum looks plant-like a bulb, roots, layers. That's the memory of the vegetable kingdom.
Your mineral plant.
Then it becomes animal-like, the tadpole shape, living in fluid like an amphibian. That's a long journey through various animal forms in past cycles.
Mineral, plant, animal.
And finally, it takes on distinct human features. The divine spirit, the monad's essence for this life, fully settles in. That's the start of the specific human experience for that incarnation.
So those 9 months are like a speed run of the monad's entire universal evolution.
Exactly. The individual cycle of evolution, condensing the vast universal one. And this view, they argue, explains things. Darwinism kind of skips over, like that brief vegetable stage in the embryo. It points directly back to the plant kingdom phase of the monad.
Okay, let's try to summarize this stark difference then. Materialistic science. It's bottom up. Starts with simple matter, physical lineage, amoeba to ape to us. It looks for a physical missing link and hasn't found that specific kind of link.
Correct. It's inductive, focuses only on external forms.
Whereas occultism,
Yeah.
it's top-down. Starts with spirit, with cosmic blueprints, divine ideas that gradually manifest as physical forms. Evolution flows from universal archetypes down into specific bodies.
Right, proceeding from universals to particulars.
And the missing link isn't a fossil bone.
No. The real link connecting us to our ultimate origin isn't physical. It's hidden inside us. It's the history and nature of our own divine monad, our spiritual core. Darwin's theory starts, you might say, looking outward, down a physical path that, from the esoteric view, hits a dead end because it ignores the spiritual source.
While occultism looks inward and upward.
To explore that limitless spiritual reality, which it claims holds the only real key to understanding where we came from and where we're ultimately going.
It's such a profoundly different way of seeing everything. One, evolution driven by matter and chance from below. The other driven by spirit and purpose from above. Two completely different stories about who we are.
It really is. And maybe a final thought to leave people with.
Yeah.
If the ultimate purpose really is this journey of the monad gaining wisdom, becoming self-aware, shedding layers of dense matter over eons,
Yeah.
what does that imply about our lives right now, our struggles, our growth? What dense matter or mindlessness are we currently in the process of shedding or transcending as part of our evolutionary step?
That is definitely something to chew on. Thank you for guiding us through this incredibly complex and frankly mind-bending territory today.
My pleasure. It's fascinating stuff.
And thank you for joining us on this extraordinary deep dive.